John Parker had always put a high value on living a peaceful life. He was 42 years old and had a stable job as a civil engineer. He had some success and made a nice home for his family in a quiet suburban neighborhood. He valued honesty and loyalty, and he brought these traits into his marriage to Lisa, the girl he fell in love with in high school. Lisa Parker was married and had a child when she was 39 years old. A part-time job as a graphic artist was what she did, taking care of their only child, Emily, while also managing her job. Emily was a smart and successful teen when she was 16. She was known for having a close relationship with both of her parents and loving music. The Parker family looked like the perfect family. They took part in neighborhood events, planned parties, and went on family trips. John had always thought he was lucky to have a friend who was there for him and a daughter who made him happy. After that, things changed in a terrible way one evening. It was cold and clear at night, which meant that winter was coming. John got home from work early and was looking forward to making his family a lovely home-cooked meal. He was joined by the smell of his Stamus lasagna, which he had made using a recipe that belonged to his grandma. As he got closer to the front door, he could hear laughter coming from inside the house. Something about the sound made him stop, even though it was warm and welcoming. He was about to open the door when there was a sudden noise. A lot of noise started. The talk that can't be heard sparked his interest. He pressed his ear against the door because he was interested and felt like something wasn't right. At first, all he could hear was background noise. But he could clearly hear Emily's voice, which had a happy tone. "Mother, your boyfriend Johnson is great. I really appreciate that you are willing to tell me about him. You are invited to the next event that he wants you to attend." That was a powerful blow to John's mind from those words. He had a sharp chill go down his spine, and his heart was beating very fast. He had always thought Lisa was pulling away, but he never thought she would betray him so badly. He was having a hard time figuring out what he had just heard because his mind was so confused. Emily had talked about her mother's beau with a level of comfort that went beyond just knowing him. The casual statement of Lisa taking part made it clear that she would be there, and the reference to Johnson made it sound like there was a closer link. John was startled as he stumbled back from the door. The lasagna fell from his hands and broke on the porch. He was so shocked that he felt like the world had fallen apart around him. He quickly turned around on his heel and left the house without looking back. He needed a place to think and let his breath out. He was angry, confused, and feeling betrayed, and his thoughts were like a storm. John left quickly and without giving a reason. After leaving a note that said, "I can't stay," he packed a bag with a few important things. "I need time to figure things out. Please respect my right to privacy." He didn't say anything about what he planned to do, location, or the date you plan to return. The house was very quiet now, but it used to be full of laughter and love. Over the next few days, Lisa was confused and heartbroken when John didn't come home. He wasn't to be found, even though she tried to find him. Their neighbors and friends were also confused, and rumors started to spread about how they left suddenly and without a reason. Emily kept quiet because she felt split between her love for her parents and the shame of what she had done. Because she feels so bad about what she did, her teenage confidence is falling apart. John, on the other hand, had moved to a simple rental house in the woods, which was a big change from the life he had known before. During the days, he stayed alone and tried to come to terms with the shock and plan what to do next. It felt like it would never get over the deception, which was so deep. He had always been an active man, and deep down he knew that just leaving wasn't enough. Because John was determined to get justice, he decided to hire Mark Turner, a private detective with a lot of experience. Turner became known for being discreet and effective, and he quickly became an important friend. John's request was easy to understand. Find out what Lisa's real relationship is like with her boss, Richard Evans, a wealthy and powerful businessman who just moved to the area. Turner's research turned up a troubling picture. He had a reputation for being both cruel and kind. His business deals were often kept secret, and rumors of wrongdoing followed him around everywhere he went. The detective found that Lisa and Richard were seeing each other for more than one reason. They were deeply involved in a web of illegal operations and dishonesty. Richard did some bad things, and his impact spread through the neighborhood. John was shocked to learn that Lisa had not only lied to him but also put Emily in this dangerous situation. Their daughter was in danger because Lisa was seeing Richard, which made the situation seem very serious. The last surprise was Lisa's admission that she had been involved in Richard's things to do. John felt deeply betrayed by everyone and everything, not just his wife. That was the last time he trusted anyone. With Turner's help, John gathered proof of Richard's illegal actions and Lisa's role in them. The proof was very bad, but the process was very time-consuming. John's last blow came when he found out that Lisa had used her access to Richard's resources to help him with his illegal activities, making herself involved in a number of crimes. John was driven to move decisively by his sense of what was right and his desire to put an end to the situation. He showed the proof Turner had gathered to the police, law enforcement, and Richard Evans and Lisa Parker were charged with serious crimes right away. The case got a lot of attention from the media. John's name wasn't used very often. His quest for revenge had paid off, but it had taken a big toll on him personally. Emily was left to find her way in a world that was broken beyond repair, and his family was a mess. John tried to keep himself away from the trouble while Lisa and Richard were fighting in court. He felt driven to rebuild his life and get away from the shadows of his past. Even though betrayal hurt a lot, he hoped that the scars would finally heal. He had no idea that this was just the start of a new part of his life that would test his strength and change the way he thought about family and forgiveness. John Parker's life was turned upside down 5 years ago when his wife Lisa betrayed him and her affair with Richard Evans became public. Even though the hurts of the past were deeply etched in his mind, time had given him the chance to heal. John worked as a civil engineering consultant as a freelancer and had moved to a small town that was very different from where he had lived before. He was able to put on a false front of normalcy, but the ghosts of his old life continued to haunt him and sometimes entered his thoughts. John's new life was very calm, very different from the chaos he had run away from. A break from his busy life before. The quiet of the small town was a welcome change. Moving to a simple house on the edge of the city was what he did, in places where the quiet was comforting instead of frightening. The same thing happened every day for him. During his daily routine, he worked from home, occasionally did social things with new people, and looked for comfort in being alone. But he still felt like some problems from the past hadn't been fixed, which made him have sleepless nights and fleeting memories of better times. It was a cool fall afternoon, and John was in his study going through a stack of papers when he heard someone knock on the door. It came as a surprise because he didn't usually have guests. A young woman who looked sad and tired was standing on the threshold when he opened the door. Her head was shaved, and her eyes were blank, showing that she was scared and ready to give up. John briefly couldn't figure out who she was. A shaky woman spoke. Dad John's heart skipped a beat as he heard her. Seeing her so different from the active teenager he knew made him feel both shocked and deeply sad. "What happened to you, John?" asked Emily, his voice barely above a murmur, as she walked into the house. As she sat down in a chair, her body shook, showing that she was upset. John quickly made her a cup of tea, but his hands were shaking the whole time. He sat down next to her and tried to understand how serious the situation was. "The story is very long." Emily's voice came shaky. "I didn't know where else to go. I had to leave," John said as Emily told him about the last 5 years of her life. Lisa had been having a hard time dealing with the effects of John's sudden exit actions. Her legal troubles, coupled with the fallout from Richard's arrest, had plunged the family into chaos. With her own prospects dwindling and her finances strained, Lisa was forced to make increasingly desperate choices. Emily, now a teenager grappling with the loss of her family's stability, found herself adrift. Her mother's involvement with Richard's criminal activities had isolated them from their community and friends. As Lisa's financial situation worsened, she fell deeper into Richard's remaining network of corrupt associates. The influence of these individuals loomed large over their lives, casting a dark shadow over Emily's adolescence. In the midst of the turmoil, Emily had tried to maintain some semblance of normalcy. She excelled academically and clung to her music as an escape from the chaos. But as time passed, the pressure and the weight of her mother's decisions began to take a toll on her mental health. Lisa's erratic behavior and financial desperation led her to make a series of poor decisions, ultimately putting Emily in a dangerous position. Emily's voice grew softer as she spoke of a particularly harrowing period. Mom got involved with some of Richard's old friends. They weren't just crooks, they were dangerous. They made threats against us, and when Mom couldn't pay them back, they yelled at me. John's heart sank as Emily told him about the mean things people had done to her. It was clear that Lisa's choices had caused Emily a lot of pain that no child should ever have to go through. Things that were said were shocking and terrible. Emily had been forced to go through terrible things that hurt her deeply, and she had been abused and threatened mentally. Even though Emily's mother meant to keep her safe at first, she couldn't keep her from facing the consequences of her connection with Richard's network. Emily told them that her life got even worse when she tried to run away from the situation. Even though she was able to leave her mother's house, there will be consequences. Her leaving was a desperate attempt to protect herself, and she had to find safety in a number of places before moving on to the next one. The trouble she had been through was clear from the dirty clothes she wore. "I couldn't stay with Mom anymore," Emily said, tears streaming down her face. "She kept telling me it would get better, but things just got worse. I had to leave to survive. I didn't know if you'd even want to see me, but I had nowhere else to go." John's heart ached as he took in Emily's words. He felt a surge of guilt and sorrow for not being there for her during those formative years. He had been so consumed by his own sense of betrayal and the quest for justice that he had failed to recognize the full impact of Lisa's actions on their daughter. "I'm so sorry, Emily," John said, his voice full of feeling. "I thought about how this was something I had never meant to happen. I thought that my choice to leave was the right thing to do. For some reason, I didn't know how bad your problems were." Emily's face showed a mix of relief and lingering sadness as she nodded. "Dad, you're not to blame. I just needed to find you. I didn't know what else to do." John took Emily's hand with care. He could see how vulnerable she was in her eyes and knew that getting back together with her would be a difficult and delicate process. For the first time in years, John felt like he had a purpose in life, even though the road ahead would be long and full of problems. He made up his mind that he would give his daughter the love and support she needed. "The first thing we should do is make sure you're comfy." While standing up, John told them, "You are now safe here. We will work together to solve the problem. You're not by yourself." It dawned on John that their journey was far from over as they talked about what to do next. Even though the memories of the past kept coming back to haunt them, they were given the chance to start over. Although the scars of betrayal and the lingering anger from old grudges would need to be healed, the link between father and daughter was a bright spot in the darkness. When John decides to adopt Emily, it's the start of a new chapter in their lives that will test how strong they are and how they think about family, forgiveness, and making things right. They had both been through unbearable hardships, but they were going to work together to face the ghosts of their past and try to build a future that wasn't tainted by them. Emily's quick return had. John Parker's peaceful life was forever changed. The reveal of her pain and the persistent shadows of his past caused John to feel a storm of feelings that he couldn't handle. In the middle of all the chaos, though, one thing became clear. He had to keep his daughter safe and face the things from the dark world that had had such a big effect on their lives. In the weeks after Emily arrived, John focused on making her feel like things were back to normal. He put her in a nearby high school and started the process of getting her mental scars treated through counseling. Even though the weight of their shared past hung over them, their daily patterns started to become more stable. John learned to find comfort in small wins, listening to her talk about her hopes and dreams for the future. While these times of bonding were important, they weren't enough to make them forget about the important problems that still loom over them. John knew that Richard Evans, even though things seemed quiet, the illegal network was still not broken up. Because of what happened after Richard was arrested, his friends and family were becoming more and more depressed and in danger. Lisa's short jail time did not stop Richard's friends from seeking revenge or continuing their illegal activities. John knew that facing these constant dangers head-on was the only way to keep Emily safe. You could feel the stress in the air. The phone rang one night while John and Emily were having dinner together. John's heart was racing as he grabbed the phone and saw the caller ID. The person in question was Mark Turner, the private detective who had helped him before. Mark's voice, which was usually calm and collected, had a sense of urgency to it. "John, we need your help." "Hey," Mark said, "I've been keeping an eye on Richard's friends, and it looks like they're planning something big. I'm worried that they are paying attention to you and Emily." John was shocked by the news like a bolt of lightning. He thought that get rid of Richard from the situation would give him some peace of mind. Still, the pieces of Richard's network continued to be a major threat. "Are you sure about this?" John tried to keep his voice steady as he asked. Mark replied with a positive tone, saying that I had been able to gather information about their actions and share it with others. In order to get back at you, they have been keeping an eye on your moves. There is only a short time left until they do something. John's thoughts were racing as he tried to come up with a plan. Face-to-face contact with the threat was dangerous, but he knew that hiding wasn't a choice. He already knew what terrible things could happen when you avoid problems. In this case, he had to stand up for himself. Finally, Mark, what do you think we should do next? John asked with a strong tone of voice. Mark's advice was straightforward. To begin, you must immediately make sure that Emily is safe and that your home is secure. A group of people I know will look out for your safety. In the meantime, each person looks into their opponent's plans to see if we can beat them. Mark's plan was now in action, and John began the process of making his home safer. He took extra safety precautions and kept a low profile to make sure he didn't set up any routines that would make it easier for criminals to spy on him. Even with these steps, the stress stayed the same. The creaky floors and cars going by made me feel like I might be in danger. A week later, John and Emily were having a quiet night at home when they heard a loud banging on the door. John had a very sharp sense. It looked like a face he knew as he looked through the peephole. Mark Turner looked messy and irritated. As John opened the door, Mark said, "John, we have a problem. They plan to put their plan into action tonight. It is very important that we leave right away." John was scared to death, but he kept his cool all the way through. "What is going on?" "Their plan has been hacked. I have reason to believe they're coming for you now, and they're not alone," Mark explained. "We don't have much time. Grab whatever you can, and let's go." John quickly gathered a few essentials and made sure Emily was ready to leave. He could see the fear in her eyes, but he offered her a reassuring smile. "We'll be okay. Just stick with me." Mark led them to a secure location, a safe house arranged by his contacts. The place was a stark contrast to the familiarity of John's home, a well-fortified property on the outskirts of town, equipped with surveillance and defensive measures. John and Emily settled in, though the sense of security was tempered by the knowledge that they were still in danger. As night fell, Mark's contacts maintained a vigilant watch over the safe house. John, Emily, and Mark waited in anxious silence, their nerves frayed by the uncertainty of the situation. Hours passed, each minute feeling like an eternity. Around midnight, the tranquility was shattered by the sound. The break-ins caused a tense standoff between Mark's contacts and the attackers. John and Emily were huddled together in a safe room, their hearts racing as they heard the muffled sounds of the fight outside. John was trying to stay calm for Emily's sake, but it was clear that the situation was very serious. After what seemed like hours, the sounds of the fight started to fade. Mark's contacts were able to push back the attackers, but the ordeal was far from over. Mark walked into the room, looking relieved but grim. "They're gone for now." Mark spoke with a tired voice, "But this isn't over. We need to find out who's behind this and make sure they're brought to justice." John and Emily were scared but not hurt. The immediate danger was over, but what happened that night made John realize how dangerous their situation was. John knew they had to act quickly to stop the threats against them. In the days that followed, Mark stepped up his investigation into Richard's associates. With the help of the police, they were able to find key members of the criminal network and gather evidence that would lead to their arrests. It was hard work, but they made progress when they found a key piece of information that linked the remaining associates to a planned attack on. After gathering a lot of evidence, police conducted a series of raids that destroyed the last pieces of Richard's criminal network. The arrests got a lot of attention, and the crimes that had been threatening John and Emily's lives were made public. Lisa's legal problems continued, but they were now less important than destroying Richard's criminal empire. John's main focus shifted to rebuilding his life with Emily, without the immediate threat of violence. The ordeal had taken its toll on both father and daughter, but they had been through unimaginable hardships and come out stronger and more understanding. Their bond had been tested by hardship, but it had been strengthened. John and Emily began to rebuild their lives. They focused on getting better and healing. The scars of the past would always be there, but they had faced the darkness together and come out on the other side with a brighter future. They found comfort in each other's company and worked to make a life that honored their strength and hope for a better tomorrow. The final stand wasn't just a battle against outside threats, it was a journey of rediscovery and redemption. John and Emily had taken back their lives from the shadows of their past and were ready to face the future with courage and optimism. The road ahead was uncertain, but they faced it together, bound by their unbreakable bond.